Congratulations, Mrs. Harlow. You just made history. The voice crackled through the phone as Vivienne stood in the parking lot of Romano's bistro, her hands trembling so violently she nearly dropped the device. 20 billion. The number didn't even sound real. It sounded like something from a movie, a dream, a lie. She pressed the phone tighter to her ear, her breath catching. Say that again. Please. $20 billion, Mrs. Harlow. The defense contract is yours. The largest private sector deal in U.S. history. The press conference is scheduled for tomorrow morning. We'll need you in Washington by 8. Vivienne's knees buckled. She grabbed the hood of her car to steady herself, the metal cold beneath her palm. 20 billion. 7 years of proposals. 7 years of rejection letters and closed doors and investors who laughed her out of boardrooms. And now this. She looked up at the restaurant where she'd agreed to meet her husband for dinner. Through the wide glass windows, she could see him sitting at their usual table. Except he wasn't alone. A woman with blonde hair and a bright smile sat across from him, leaning in close, her hand resting on top of his. Vivienne's heart stopped. She watched as her husband, the man she'd supported through law school, the man who'd slept beside her for 9 years, lifted the woman's hand to his lips and kissed it gently. The phone was still pressed to her ear, but she couldn't hear anything anymore. Not the congratulations. Not the logistics. Not the world that had just shifted beneath her feet. All she could hear was the crack of her own heart breaking. Hello, my amazing family and friends. I'm so glad you're here with me again today. If you're ready to dive into another powerful story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me the country or city you're watching from. And guess what? Tomorrow, I've got another story lined up that will leave you just as captivated, so don't miss it. Now, let's get started. Vivienne Harlow had never been the kind of woman who needed validation. Not from her parents, who thought engineering was too hard for a girl. Not from her professors, who dismissed her ideas as ambitious but impractical. And certainly not from the venture capitalists who told her that a woman in her 30s with no military background had no business bidding on defense contracts. But she had always needed one person's belief. Just one. Her husband's. That morning, she'd woken up at 4:30, same as every morning for the past 7 years. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of sprinklers outside. She'd made coffee, black and strong, and sat at the kitchen island with her laptop open, reviewing the final documents for what she'd started calling the impossible pitch. $20 billion. It wasn't just money. It was vindication. Proof that she wasn't crazy. Proof that the years of mockery and rejection hadn't been in vain. She had glanced at the clock. 5:15. Her husband, Garrett, was still asleep upstairs. She thought about waking him, thought about climbing back into bed and whispering, "Today might be the day." But she didn't. He'd been distant lately. Stressed about work, he'd said. A big case. Long hours. She understood. She had her own long hours. So she let him sleep. By 6, she was dressed in her best navy suit, the one she saved for presentations. She checked herself in the mirror. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun. Her makeup was simple but polished. She looked like someone who belonged in a boardroom. She hoped. Garrett came downstairs, just as she was putting on her heels. "Big day?" he asked, his voice flat. She looked up, surprised he'd remembered. "The biggest. I should hear back by this afternoon." He nodded, pouring himself coffee. He didn't look at her. "Garrett," she said softly. "If this works, if I actually get this contract, everything changes. For both of us." He took a long sip, his back to her. "That's great, Viv. Really?" There was no warmth in his voice. No excitement. No pride. She swallowed the hurt. "I was thinking we could have dinner tonight. Celebrate. Or commiserate. Either way." He turned, finally meeting her eyes. "Yeah. Sure. Romano's. 7 o'clock. 7. She walked over and kissed him on the cheek. He didn't kiss her back. Vivienne told herself it was just stress. Just a rough patch. Every marriage had them. But as she drove to her office that morning, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered something she didn't want to hear. "He doesn't see you anymore." Garrett Harlow had fallen out of love with his wife, so gradually he hadn't noticed it happening. It wasn't one moment. It wasn't a fight or a betrayal. It was 1,000 small things. The way she was always working. Always distracted. Always talking about contracts and engineers and prototypes he didn't understand. He used to find her passion attractive. Now it just made him feel invisible. He was a corporate attorney. A good one. He made excellent money, handled major clients, won cases that mattered. But next to Vivienne's world-saving dreams and billion-dollar bids, his work felt small. And so did he. That was when he met Justine. She was a waitress at the diner 2 blocks from his office. 26 years old, blonde, bubbly, with a smile that made him feel like the most important person in the room. She laughed at his jokes. She asked about his day. She listened. She made him feel like a man again. It started innocently. Coffee during his lunch break. Conversations that stretched longer than they should. Then came the texts. The late nights when Vivienne was at the lab. The guilt he swallowed with every lie. And then 3 weeks ago, Justine had looked at him across the table at a bar and said, "You're too good for her, you know." Garrett had wanted to argue. But he didn't. Now, sitting in his office at 9 in the morning, he stared at his phone. Justine had texted him an hour ago. "I miss you. When can I see you?" He typed back quickly. "Tonight. I'll tell her tonight." He'd been planning to do it for weeks. He just needed the right moment. The right words. He wasn't a cruel man. He didn't want to hurt Vivienne. But he couldn't keep pretending. He loved someone else now. His phone buzzed again. "I'm so proud of you, babe. This takes guts. I'll be waiting." Garrett exhaled. Tonight. He'd do it tonight. Vivienne's phone rang at 2:30 in the afternoon. She was in her office, surrounded by blueprints and CAD models, when the call came through. The name on the screen made her heart stop. Secretary Bradford. She answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Harlow, I'll keep this brief. The committee has reached a decision." Vivienne couldn't breathe. "Congratulations. You've been awarded the contract. All 20 billion. The room spun. I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" "You won, Mrs. Harlow. The largest private defense contract in American history is yours. We'll need you in Washington tomorrow morning for the press conference. This is going to be everywhere. CNN, Fox, The Times. You're about to become very famous." Vivienne pressed a hand to her chest. She thought she might pass out. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." "No, Mrs. Harlow. Thank you. What you've designed is going to save lives. We're honored to work with you." When the call ended, Vivienne sat in stunned silence. Then she started laughing. Crying. Both at once. She'd done it. 7 years. 7 brutal, exhausting, soul-crushing years. And she'd actually done it. She grabbed her phone and started to call Garrett. Then stopped. No. Not over the phone. She wanted to see his face. Wanted to watch him realize that all those nights she'd worked late, all those investor meetings she dragged him to, all of it had been worth it. She wanted him to be proud of her. She texted him instead. "Still on for tonight? I have news." His reply came fast. "Yeah. Romano's. 7. She smiled. Tonight, everything would be perfect. Vivienne arrived at Romano's at 6:50. She'd gone home to change, trading her work clothes for a soft green dress Garrett had once said brought out her eyes. She'd let her hair down, put on the perfume he liked, even added a touch of lipstick. She felt giddy. Nervous. Alive. When she pulled into the parking lot, she saw his car already there. Good. He'd arrived early. Maybe he was excited too. She was about to step out of the car when her phone rang again. It was her publicist, Rachel. "Vivienne, oh my God, congratulations. I just got off the phone with the Times. They want an exclusive interview before the press conference. This is huge. You're going to be on the cover of every major." "Rachel, I'm about to have dinner with my husband. Can we talk later?" Of course, of course. Celebrate. You deserve this." Vivienne hung up, smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. She stepped out of the car and started toward the restaurant. That's when she saw them. Through the glass. Garrett. Sitting at their table. And a blonde woman across from him. Vivienne froze. At first, she thought maybe it was a colleague. A client. But then Garrett reached across the table and took the woman's hand. Vivienne's stomach dropped. She watched, unable to move, as he lifted the woman's hand to his lips. As he kissed it. As the woman smiled, blushing, and squeezed his fingers. Vivienne's legs moved on autopilot. She walked toward the window, her heels clicking against the pavement, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. The blonde woman noticed her first. Her eyes flicked toward the glass, and her smile faltered. Garrett turned. Their eyes met. For a long, horrible moment, neither of them moved. Then Garrett stood, his face going pale. Vivienne didn't wait. She turned and walked back to her car, her vision blurring with tears. She heard the door to the restaurant open behind her. Viv, wait. She didn't stop. Vivienne, please just let me explain. She spun around, and the look on her face made him stop in his tracks. Explain. Her voice cracked. Explain what, Garrett? Explain why my husband is holding hands with another woman? Explain why you're kissing her in the restaurant where we had our first date. It's not what you think. Then what is it? He looked down, unable to meet her eyes. I was going to tell you tonight. The words hit her like a slap. Tell me what? He looked up, and there was something in his expression she'd never seen before. Resolve. I want a divorce. If you were Vivienne in this moment, what would you do? Would you fight for your marriage or walk away? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. Vivienne stared at him, her mind unable to process the words. You what? I'm sorry, Garrett said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. I didn't plan for this to happen. I didn't want to hurt you. But I can't keep pretending. Pretending what? That I'm happy. That we're happy. She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. We were fine, Garrett. We were fine until you decided to throw everything away for some waitress. His jaw tightened. Don't talk about her like that. Her. Vivienne's voice rose. You're defending her? I'm your wife. I know, he said quietly. And I'm sorry. But I don't love you anymore, Viv. The words sucked all the air from her lungs. I don't love you anymore. She took a step back, her hand reaching for the car to steady herself. When? She whispered. What? When did you stop? He hesitated. I don't know. It's been a while. A while. Months? Years? How long had he been lying next to her, pretending? I gave you everything, she said, her voice shaking. I put you through law school. I supported you when you were unemployed. I believed in you when no one else did. I know, he said. And I'll always be grateful for that. But gratitude isn't love. She felt something inside her shatter. I was going to tell you tonight, she said, her voice barely audible. I won the contract. $20 billion. Garrett. I actually did it. For a brief second, something flickered in his eyes. Shock. Maybe even regret. But then it was gone. That's amazing, Viv. Really. You deserve it. She stared at him. That's it? That's all you have to say? He looked down. I'm sorry. Vivienne wanted to scream. To cry. To hit him. But instead, she did something worse. She laughed. You have no idea what you just did, she said softly. No idea. She got in her car, started the engine, and drove away. In her rearview mirror, she saw Garrett standing in the parking lot, watching her go. And beside him, the blonde woman stepped out of the restaurant, wrapping her arms around his waist. Vivienne gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. And she drove. She didn't cry. Not yet. She just drove. Vivienne didn't remember the drive home. One moment she was pulling out of Romano's parking lot, and the next she was sitting in her driveway, staring at the house she'd bought with Garrett 5 years ago. The house they'd painted together. The house where they'd talked about kids someday. The house that now felt like a tomb. Her phone buzzed. 12 missed calls. 6 from Rachel, her publicist. 3 from her lead engineer, Troy. 2 from her lawyer. 1 from her mother. And nothing from Garrett. She turned the phone off and walked inside. The living room was exactly as she'd left it that morning. Garrett's coffee mug still sat on the counter, half full. His jacket hung on the back of the dining room chair. Evidence of a life that no longer existed. Vivienne walked upstairs to their bedroom and opened his closet. His suits hung in neat rows. His shoes lined the floor. Everything in its place. Everything perfect. She grabbed the first suit jacket she could reach and pulled it off the hanger. Then another. And another. She threw them on the floor, her movements mechanical, emotionless. Shirts. Pants. Ties. All of it landed in a heap. Then she sat down in the middle of the pile and finally let herself cry. Not quiet tears. Not dignified tears. Ugly, choking sobs that tore through her chest and made her whole body shake. 9 years. 9 years of her life, gone. She'd been 24 when they met. Fresh out of graduate school, full of dreams and ambition. He'd been charming, confident, everything she thought she wanted. He'd pursued her relentlessly, made her feel special, made her feel seen. When had that changed? When had she become invisible to him? She cried until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen. Then she lay down on the floor, surrounded by his clothes, and stared at the ceiling. Her phone was still off. The world thought she was a genius. A trailblazer. The woman who'd just secured the biggest contract in history. But right now, she just felt like a fool. Garrett stood in Justine's apartment, a small one-bedroom in a complex near the highway. It was nothing like the house he shared with Vivienne. The furniture was cheap, the walls were thin, and the whole place smelled faintly of vanilla candles. But it felt lighter somehow. Easier. Justine handed him a beer and curled up next to him on the couch. "How did she take it?" she asked softly. Garrett took a long drink. "About as well as you'd expect." "Did you tell her about me?" "She saw us. Through the window." Justine winced. "Oh, babe. I'm so sorry." "It's fine," he said, though his voice sounded hollow. "It's better this way. Cleaner." Justine rested her head on his shoulder. "I know this is hard. But you did the right thing. You can't stay in a marriage that's making you miserable." He nodded, but something in his chest felt tight. Vivienne's face kept flashing through his mind. The way she'd looked at him in that parking lot. Not angry. Not even hurt. Broken. He pushed the thought away. "She said something weird before she left," he said. "What?" "She said she won some kind of contract. $20 billion. Justine sat up. "Wait, what?" "I don't know. Some work thing. She's always working on something." Justine grabbed her phone and started typing. "What's her company called?" "Harlow Industries." "Why?" Justine's eyes went wide as she stared at her screen. "Oh my God." "What?" She turned the phone toward him. The headline read, "Breaking, Harlow Industries awarded $20 billion defense contract, largest private sector deal in U.S. history." Beneath it was a photo of Vivienne shaking hands with the Secretary of Defense. Garrett's beer slipped from his hand, spilling across the carpet. "$20 billion? Justine whispered. "Garrett, that's real?" He couldn't speak. He just stared at the screen. The article continued, "Vivienne Harlow, 33, CEO of Harlow Industries, has been awarded a historic $20 billion contract to develop next-generation defense technology. The deal, finalized this afternoon, marks the largest private sector contract ever issued by the U.S. Department of Defense." Harlow, who founded her company 7 years ago with less than $50,000 in startup capital, is now being hailed as one of the most influential entrepreneurs of her generation. There was more. Quotes from senators. Praise from military officials. A timeline of her company's growth. And at the bottom, a line that made Garrett's stomach turn. Harlow, who is married to corporate attorney Garrett Harlow, could not be reached for comment. Justine set the phone down slowly. "You left her today?" "The same day she won $20 billion. Garrett didn't answer. "Garrett," Justine said again, her voice rising. Do you understand what this means? She's about to be everywhere. Every news channel. Every magazine. And everyone's going to know you're her husband. He looked at her. So. Justine stood up, pacing. So you just asked her for a divorce on the same day she became one of the most powerful women in the country. How do you think that's going to look? I didn't know, he said, his voice sharp. How was I supposed to know? You could have asked. You could have waited one day. I've been waiting for months, Justine. She stopped pacing and looked at him. Really looked at him. Do you still love her? No, he said quickly. Too quickly. Justine crossed her arms. Are you sure? Because you look like you just made the biggest mistake of your life. I didn't. But even as he said it, doubt crept in. Vivienne woke up the next morning on the bedroom floor, still surrounded by Garrett's clothes. Sunlight streamed through the window, and for a moment, she forgot. Then it all came crashing back. The contract. The restaurant. The blonde woman. The divorce. She sat up slowly, her body stiff and aching. Her phone was still off. She picked it up, hesitated, then turned it on. It exploded with notifications. Texts. Emails. Voicemails. Hundreds of them. She scrolled through, her heart pounding. Rachel, Viv. Where are you? The press conference is in 2 hours. Call me now. Troy, boss, congratulations. This is incredible. Let me know when you're ready to celebrate. Her lawyer, Vivienne, we need to talk. Call me as soon as possible. And then, at the bottom, one from a number she didn't recognize. Mrs. Harlow, this is Jonathan Rees from the New York Times. We'd love to speak with you about your historic contract and your journey as a female entrepreneur. Please call at your earliest convenience. She set the phone down and walked to the bathroom. Her reflection in the mirror was a nightmare. Swollen eyes. Smudged makeup. Hair tangled and wild. She looked like someone who'd spent the night crying on a floor. Because she had. She turned on the shower and stood under the hot water until her skin turned red. Then she got dressed, pulled her hair back, and put on enough makeup to hide the damage. By the time she walked out the door, she looked like Vivienne Harlow, CEO. Not Vivienne Harlow, abandoned wife. The press conference was held in a massive hotel ballroom in Washington, D.C. Vivienne stood backstage, her hands shaking as Rachel went over the schedule. You'll walk out with Secretary Bradford. He'll introduce you. You'll say a few words. Keep it short. Humble. Grateful. Then we'll take questions. Questions about what? Vivienne asked. The contract. Your company. Your vision. Rachel paused. They might ask about your personal life. Your husband. Vivienne's stomach twisted. What do I say? Say he's supportive. Say he's proud. Keep it vague. Vivienne nodded, but she felt like she might be sick. Mrs. Harlow. A young assistant poked her head through the curtain. You're on in 2. Vivienne took a deep breath. She could do this. She'd fought for 7 years to get here. She wasn't going to fall apart now. The curtain pulled back, and she stepped into the light. The room was packed. Reporters. Cameras. Flashing lights. A sea of faces all turned toward her. Secretary Bradford stood at the podium, smiling. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to introduce a true visionary. A woman who has redefined what's possible in defense technology. Please welcome Vivienne Harlow. The room erupted in applause. Vivienne walked to the podium, her legs somehow steady. She looked out at the crowd, and for a moment, she felt it. Pride. Not because of Garrett. Not because someone else believed in her. Because she believed in herself. She gripped the edges of the podium and began to speak. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And thank you to everyone here today. 7 years ago, I started Harlow Industries in my garage with a dream and a very small bank account. Laughter rippled through the room. I was told no 1,000 times. I was told I didn't have the experience, the credentials, the background. But I believed in the work. And I believed that if I kept going, eventually, someone else would too. She paused, her voice steady. This contract isn't just about money. It's about proving that innovation doesn't have a gender. It doesn't have an age. It just takes persistence. And I'm honored to have the opportunity to serve my country. The applause was deafening. Vivienne smiled. And for the first time in 24 hours, she didn't think about Garrett at all. Garrett sat in his office, his door closed, his phone face down on the desk. He'd watched the press conference live on his computer. He'd seen Vivienne stand in front of the world, confident and brilliant and completely untouchable. And he'd felt something he didn't want to name. Regret. His office phone rang. He ignored it. His cell buzzed. He ignored that too. Then his boss knocked on the door. "Hello. My office. Now." Garrett's stomach sank. He followed his boss, Martin Cruz, down the hall to the corner office. Martin closed the door and gestured to a chair. "Sit." Garrett sat. Martin leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "I just got a very interesting call." Garrett said nothing. From a reporter. Asking if I had any comment on the fact that one of my top attorneys is married to Vivienne Harlow. The Vivienne Harlow. The woman who just made history. Garrett's throat went dry. "I told them I had no comment," Martin continued. "But then I did a little digging. And I found out something fascinating." He pulled out his phone and turned it toward Garrett. It was a gossip blog. The headline read, "Trouble in Paradise? Vivienne Harlow's husband spotted with mystery blonde just hours before historic contract announcement." Beneath it was a photo. Grainy, but clear enough. Garrett and Justine. At Romano's. Holding hands. "Care to explain?" Martin asked, his voice ice cold. Garrett felt his world tilt. "It's personal." "Personal." Martin's laugh was harsh. "Garrett, your wife just became one of the most famous women in America. And you're out here making us all look like idiots. Do you have any idea what this does to the firm's reputation?" "I didn't think." "No. You didn't." Martin stood. "Take the rest of the week off. Figure out your life. And pray this doesn't blow up bigger than it already has." Garrett left the office in a daze. By the time he got to his car, his phone was ringing again. It was his mother. He answered. "Garrett William Harlow, what on earth have you done? What do you think happens when pride and timing collide? Have you ever made a decision you immediately regretted? Let me know in the comments." Vivienne returned to her hotel room that evening exhausted but strangely calm. The press conference had gone well. The interviews had been brutal but manageable. Everyone wanted to know her story. How she'd done it. What came next. No one had asked about Garrett. Yet. Rachel had warned her it was coming. The photo from Romano's was already circulating online. It was only a matter of time before someone connected the dots. She sat on the edge of the hotel bed and finally let herself check her personal messages. There were 3 from Garrett. The first, "Viv, we need to talk." The second, "Please call me. I know you're angry, but we need to figure this out." The third, "I'm sorry. I didn't know about the contract. I didn't know any of this would happen." She read them twice. Then deleted them. Her lawyer had sent a message too. "Vivienne, I know this is a difficult time, but we need to discuss asset protection. Given the size of your contract, a divorce could get very complicated. Call me when you can." Assets. She hadn't even thought about that. Garrett would be entitled to half of everything. The house. The savings. Maybe even part of the company, depending on how the court saw it. The company she'd built from nothing while he was off falling in love with someone else. Her hands curled into fists. No. She wasn't going to let him take anything else from her. She called her lawyer. "Vivienne," he answered immediately. "I've been trying to reach you." "I know. I'm sorry. It's been a nightmare." "I can imagine. Listen, we need to move fast. If Garrett files first, things could get messy. Do you have a prenup?" "No." Her lawyer swore softly. "Okay. That complicates things. But we can still protect you." When did he ask for the divorce? Last night. Before or after the contract was announced? Before. He didn't know. There was a pause. That might actually work in our favor. If we can prove he initiated the divorce without knowledge of your financial windfall, we can argue he has no claim to it. Can you make sure of that? I'll do everything I can. But Vivienne, I have to ask. Is there any chance of reconciliation? She thought of Garrett's face in the parking lot. The way he'd looked at the blonde woman. No, she said firmly. None. Then let's get to work. 3 days later, the story exploded. It started with a tabloid. Then a blog. Then Twitter. Vivienne Harlow's husband files for divorce days after she wins $20 billion contract. Did he know? The suspicious timing of Garrett Harlow's divorce filing. From garage startup to billionaire, and newly single. The narrative wrote itself. Brilliant woman builds empire. Selfish husband abandons her at her peak. The internet loved it. Garrett became the villain overnight. His photo was everywhere. People dug up his social media, his work history, even his college fraternity photos. They found Justine too. Her Instagram was flooded with hateful comments. And Vivienne? She became a symbol. A hero. The woman who didn't need a man to succeed. She tried to ignore it. Tried to focus on the work. But everywhere she went, people recognized her. Stopped her. Congratulated her. Some even apologized on Garrett's behalf, as if they knew him personally. It was overwhelming. And lonely. Because despite everything, despite the contract and the fame and the vindication, she still went home to an empty house every night. She still woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there. Garrett's life unraveled quickly. The firm put him on indefinite leave. His friends stopped calling. His family was furious. Even Justine started pulling away. "This is too much," she said one night, sitting on the edge of her couch, her phone in her hand. "I can't go anywhere without people recognizing me. They're calling me a homewrecker, Garrett. My boss saw the photos. I might lose my job." "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it. "I never wanted this." "Neither did I." She looked at him, and there was something different in her eyes. Something colder. "Maybe we should take a break. Until this all dies down." A break. Yeah. Just some space. He stared at her. "You're leaving me?" "I'm not leaving you. I just think we need to be smart. This is a lot of attention. A lot of pressure. I left my wife for you." "I know," she said quietly. "And I'm grateful. But I didn't sign up for this." She stood, grabbing her purse. "I'm going to stay with my sister for a while. I'll call you when things calm down." And just like that, she was gone. Garrett sat alone in her apartment, surrounded by the ruins of his choices, and for the first time, he let himself admit the truth. He'd made a terrible mistake. 2 weeks after the press conference, Vivienne received an unexpected visitor. She was working late in her office when her assistant knocked. "Ms. Harlow, there's someone here to see you." "I'm not taking meetings tonight." "He says it's personal. His name is Callum Brixton." Vivienne frowned. She didn't know anyone by that name. "Send him in." A moment later, a man stepped into her office. He was tall, maybe early 40s, with dark hair starting to gray at the temples. He wore a well-tailored suit and carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone used to being in charge. "Ms. Harlow," he said, extending a hand. "Thank you for seeing me." She shook it cautiously. "Have we met?" "No. But I've followed your work for years. I'm the CEO of Obsidian Global. We're a private equity firm based in New York." Vivienne's eyebrows rose. Obsidian Global was one of the largest investment firms in the world. "What can I do for you, Mr. Brixton?" He smiled. "Actually, I'm here to talk about what I can do for you." He set a folder on her desk. "I know the last few weeks have been difficult. Personally and professionally. And I know that your contract, as historic as it is just the beginning. You're going to need infrastructure, resources, partnerships." She opened the folder. Inside was a proposal. A partnership deal. Obsidian Global wanted to invest $2 billion into Harlow Industries. Her heart skipped. This is Generous. Callum finished. It is. Because I believe in what you're building. And I believe you're going to change the world. She looked up at him. Why now? He met her eyes. Because I know what it's like to be underestimated. And I know what it's like to prove everyone wrong. There was something in his voice. Something real. I'll need time to review this, she said. Of course. Take all the time you need. He turned to leave, then paused. And Ms. Harlow? For what it's worth, your husband is an idiot. She blinked, surprised. Callum smiled. Anyone who walks away from a woman like you deserves exactly what he's getting. And with that, he left. Vivienne sat in her office, staring at the proposal, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Not because of Garrett. Not because of revenge. But because she realized something. She didn't need him. She never had. Over the next month, Vivienne threw herself into work with a ferocity that surprised even her. The partnership with Obsidian Global moved forward after her legal team vetted every line of the contract. Callum Brixton proved to be everything he'd promised: professional, insightful, and remarkably easy to work with. They met twice a week, sometimes at her office, sometimes at his in Manhattan. He understood her vision in a way Garrett never had. He asked questions that made her think deeper, pushed her to expand her goals, and never once made her feel like she was too ambitious. You're thinking too small, he'd said during one meeting, pointing at her 5-year projection. You've just won the biggest defense contract in history. Every government in the world is going to want what you're building. Why limit yourself to the US market? She'd stared at the numbers, then at him. You think I should go international? I think you should go global. And I think you should do it now, while everyone's watching. It was intimidating, exciting, terrifying, but it felt right. Meanwhile, her divorce proceedings moved forward like a slow-motion car crash. Garrett had hired a lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Vance who was known for getting big settlements. They were claiming he deserved half of everything, including future earnings from the contract. Vivienne's lawyer, Duncan Shaw, had laughed when he'd read the filing. They're reaching, he'd said. The contract was signed after he filed for divorce. He has no legal claim to it. But they're going to try. Let them try, Vivienne had said coldly. He's not getting a dime. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. Until then, they'd agreed to stay away from each other. No contact. No communication. Vivienne was fine with that. She'd stopped thinking about him. Or at least, she'd stopped letting herself think about him during the day. At night, alone in the house that felt too big and too empty, it was harder. She'd catch herself listening for his footsteps. Reaching for her phone to text him something funny. Rolling over in bed and expecting him to be there. Those moments hurt the most. Because they reminded her that the betrayal wasn't just about another woman. It was about losing her best friend. Garrett's life had become unrecognizable. He'd moved out of Justine's apartment after she made it clear she needed space. Space that had now stretched into 4 weeks of silence. He was living in a corporate rental, a sterile one-bedroom with furniture that didn't belong to him and walls that felt like they were closing in. Work had become impossible. Martin had eventually let him come back, but the whispers followed him everywhere. People stopped talking when he entered the break room. Clients requested different attorneys. His career, once promising, was now in free fall. And everywhere he looked, there was Vivienne. She was on magazine covers, news programs, podcasts. The woman who'd overcome rejection and sexism to build an empire. The woman who didn't need anyone. He'd watched one interview late at night, unable to stop himself. The host had asked, "There's been a lot of public interest in your personal life. Your divorce. How are you handling all of that?" Vivienne had smiled, but it hadn't reached her eyes. "I'm handling it the way I handle everything. By focusing on the work. My personal life is personal. But I will say this, I've learned that you can't build your happiness on someone else's belief in you. You have to believe in yourself first." The audience had erupted in applause. Garrett had turned off the TV and sat in the dark. She was right. She'd always been right. And he'd been too blind, too insecure, too selfish to see it. His phone buzzed. A text from his lawyer. "Discovery is moving forward. They're requesting financial records going back 10 years. This is going to get ugly. Garrett closed his eyes. Ugly didn't even begin to cover it. 6 weeks after the press conference, Vivienne walked into the courthouse in downtown Seattle. The building was old, imposing, with marble floors and high ceilings that made every sound echo. Duncan walked beside her, his briefcase in hand, his expression calm. "Remember," he said quietly. "Don't react. Don't engage. Let me do the talking." She nodded. They pushed through the heavy wooden doors into the courtroom. It was smaller than she'd expected. Just a few rows of benches, a judge's platform, and 2 tables facing each other. Garrett was already there. He sat at the opposite table with Patricia Vance, his hands folded in front of him. He looked thinner. Tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his suit, though expensive, looked like it didn't fit quite right anymore. He glanced up as she entered. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Vivienne looked away and took her seat. The judge entered, an older woman with silver hair and a no-nonsense expression. Everyone stood. "Please be seated," the judge said, settling into her chair. She glanced at the paperwork in front of her. "We're here today for the preliminary hearing in the matter of Harlow versus Harlow. Let's begin." Patricia Vance stood. "Your Honor, my client Garrett Harlow is seeking a fair and equitable division of assets acquired during the marriage, including but not limited to the family home, joint savings, and a portion of Mrs. Harlow's business." Duncan stood immediately. "Your Honor, Mrs. Harlow's business was founded and built entirely through her own efforts and capital. Mr. Harlow had no involvement in its creation or growth. Furthermore, the contract in question, which is the primary asset under dispute, was awarded after Mr. Harlow filed for divorce. He has no legal claim to it." "That's not entirely accurate," Patricia countered. "Mr. Harlow supported Mrs. Harlow emotionally and financially during the early years of her business. He provided stability that allowed her to take risks. That contribution has value." "Emotional support is not a billable asset," Duncan shot back. The judge held up a hand. "Counselors, I've read the filings. This is a preliminary hearing, not a trial. Save your arguments." She looked at Garrett. "Mr. Harlow, you filed for divorce on the evening of October 14th. Is that correct?" Garrett stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "And were you aware at that time that your wife had been awarded a $20 billion government contract?" He hesitated. "No, Your Honor." "When did you become aware?" "The next day. I saw it on the news." The judge made a note. Then she looked at Vivienne. "Mrs. Harlow, when were you informed of the contract?" Vivienne stood. "That afternoon, Your Honor. Around 2:30. "And you didn't tell your husband?" "I wanted to tell him in person. We had dinner plans that evening." "The same evening he asked for a divorce?" "Yes." The judge sat back, studying them both. "This is a unique situation. I'm going to order a full financial audit of both parties. We'll reconvene in 30 days to review the findings and determine a fair division of assets." She paused. "I'll also say this. The timing of this divorce is unfortunate, but it doesn't negate the fact that you were married for 9 years. Both of you contributed to this marriage in different ways. Let's not lose sight of that." She banged her gavel. Court adjourned. Vivienne stood in the courthouse hallway, waiting for Duncan to finish talking to the clerk. She felt numb. Drained. "Vivienne." She turned. Garrett was standing a few feet away, his hands in his pockets. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. "Just for a minute." She glanced at Duncan, who gave her a warning look. But she nodded. Garrett stepped closer, and for the first time in weeks, they were alone. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know that doesn't mean much. But I need you to know that I never wanted it to be like this." "Like what?" she asked. "Public? Humiliating? Or are you sorry you got caught?" He flinched. "I'm sorry I hurt you." "You didn't just hurt me, Garrett. You destroyed me. You made me feel like everything I did, everything I accomplished, didn't matter because I couldn't even keep my own husband interested." "That's not true. Isn't it?" Her voice cracked. "I gave you everything. And it still wasn't enough. You gave me everything except yourself, he said quietly. You were always working, Viv. Always chasing the next goal. I felt like I was living with a stranger. She stared at him. So it's my fault? No. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? He looked down. I'm saying we both made mistakes. I'm saying I wish things had been different. Well, they're not. She stepped back. And wishing doesn't change anything. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Garrett watched her go, and the weight of his choices settled over him like a stone. That night, Vivienne sat in her home office, staring at her laptop. She couldn't focus. Couldn't think. Seeing Garrett in court had brought everything back. The anger. The hurt. The betrayal. But also something else. Loneliness. Her phone buzzed. A text from Callum. Saw the news about the hearing. You doing okay? She smiled faintly. Over the past month, Callum had become something unexpected. A friend. Someone who checked in. Who asked how she was doing and actually seemed to care about the answer. She typed back. I've had better days. His response came immediately. Want to talk about it? I'm a decent listener. She hesitated. Then typed, actually yeah. That would be nice. My office? I'm still here. I'll order food. 30 minutes later, Vivienne walked into Obsidian Global's sleek Manhattan office. The space was all glass and steel, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Callum met her at the elevator, 2 takeout containers in hand. Tie okay? He asked. Perfect. They sat in his office, the city lights glittering below them, and ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Court was rough, huh? Callum finally said. Brutal, she admitted. I thought I was ready to see him. I wasn't. You still love him. It wasn't a question. Vivienne set down her fork. I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe I just love who I thought he was. Callum nodded. I get that. I was married once. Long time ago. She left me for her personal trainer. Very cliché. Vivienne's eyes widened. I'm sorry. I didn't know. It's okay. It was years ago. And honestly, best thing that ever happened to me. Because it forced me to figure out who I was without her. Turns out, I'm a pretty decent guy. She laughed, and it felt good. You are. So are you, he said. A pretty decent person, I mean. Better than decent, actually. You're brilliant. Driven. Kind. Any man who can't see that is an idiot. She looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something shift. Thank you, she said softly. He smiled. Anytime. They talked for hours. About work. About life. About dreams and failures and everything in between. And when Vivienne finally left, walking out into the cool night air, she realized something. She hadn't thought about Garrett once. The financial audit came back 3 weeks later. Duncan called her with the results. Good news, he said. The audit confirms that Harlow Industries was funded entirely by you. Garrett contributed nothing financially. His claim to the company is dead in the water. Vivienne exhaled. And the house? That's trickier. You bought it together. Legally, he's entitled to half. Fine. He can have it. I don't want it anymore. What about the savings? Split it. I don't care. I just want this over. Duncan paused. Vivienne, are you sure? You're entitled to fight for more. I don't want to fight anymore, Duncan. I just want to move on. Okay. I'll draw up the settlement. When she hung up, she felt lighter. It was almost over. Garrett sat in his lawyer's office, staring at the settlement offer. Vivienne was giving him half the house. Half the savings. Nothing else. This is more than fair, Patricia said. Honestly, it's generous. She could have fought you on the house. I know, Garrett said quietly. So you'll sign. He looked at the papers. His signature would end it. End 9 years. End everything. Can I ask you something? He said. Patricia nodded. Do you think I made a mistake? She leaned back in her chair. You want my honest opinion? Yes. I think you left a woman who loved you for someone who loved the idea of you. And I think you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. Garrett's throat tightened. But, Patricia continued, that's not my business. My job is to get you the best deal possible. And this is it. He picked up the pen. And signed. If you were given a second chance to fix the biggest mistake of your life, would you take it? Or would you be too afraid? Drop your thoughts below. The divorce was finalized on a cold morning in December. Vivienne didn't attend the final hearing. Duncan handled it. When he called to tell her it was done, she was in a meeting with Callum, reviewing plans for a new manufacturing facility in Texas. It's over, Duncan said. You're officially a free woman. Thank you, she said. For everything. When she hung up, Callum looked at her. You okay? She nodded. Yeah, I really am. And she meant it. That evening, Callum took her to dinner to celebrate. Not the divorce, he'd said, but her freedom. They went to a small French restaurant in Soho, the kind of place with dim lighting and candles on every table. To new beginnings, Callum said, raising his glass. Vivienne clinked hers against his. To new beginnings. They talked about the future. About expanding internationally. About the possibilities. And somewhere between the appetizer and dessert, Vivienne realized she was happy. Not the frantic, desperate kind of happy she'd felt when she won the contract. But a quiet, steady kind. The kind that felt like coming home. Can I ask you something? Callum said as they walked out into the snowy street. Of course. Why did you say yes to the partnership? You didn't need my money. You could have done this on your own. She thought about it. Because you saw me. Not the contract. Not the headlines. Just me. He smiled. I did. I do. There was a moment, standing there in the snow, where Vivienne thought he might kiss her. But he didn't. Instead he said, I'm glad you took a chance on me. Me too. Garrett saw the photo 3 days later. It was on a business blog. Vivienne and Callum Brixton leaving a restaurant together, laughing, her hand on his arm. The headline read, Power Couple? Vivienne Harlow spotted with billionaire CEO Callum Brixton. He stared at it for a long time. Then he closed his laptop and sat in the dark. Justine had stopped returning his calls 2 weeks ago. His job was barely holding together. He'd moved into a smaller apartment because he couldn't afford the rental anymore. Everything he'd thought would make him happy had crumbled. And Vivienne? She was thriving. He'd lost her. And he was finally realizing what that meant. Christmas came and went in a blur of gray skies and frozen silence. Vivienne spent the holiday working, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that she didn't mind. In years past, Christmas had been her favorite time. She and Garrett would decorate the tree together, drink hot chocolate, watch old movies. It had been their tradition. This year, she donated the decorations to Goodwill and flown to Texas to oversee the groundbreaking of the new facility. Callum had flown down to join her. You know it's Christmas, right? He'd said when he arrived at the construction site, snowflakes dusting his dark coat. I know, she'd replied, grinning. Best day to work. No traffic. He'd laughed and handed her a thermos. Well, if you're going to work on Christmas, at least do it with good coffee. It was a small gesture. Simple. But it meant more to her than he probably knew. They'd spent the day reviewing blueprints, talking to contractors, planning timelines. And when the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they'd stood together looking at the skeletal frame of what would soon be a state-of-the-art manufacturing plant. You built this, Callum had said quietly. All of it. You should be proud. I am, she'd said. And for the first time, she truly was. Not because someone else told her to be, but because she could finally see it herself. Garrett spent Christmas alone in his apartment. His mother had invited him home to Portland, but he couldn't face it. Couldn't face the questions, the disappointment, the inevitable comparisons to his younger brother who had a perfect marriage and 3 perfect kids. So he'd stayed in Seattle, ordered Chinese food, and tried not to think about what Vivienne was doing. He failed. He found himself scrolling through her social media, even though he knew it would only hurt. She'd posted a photo from Texas. Her standing in front of the construction site, hard hat on, arms crossed, smiling like she owned the world. Because she did. The comments were full of praise. Congratulations. Inspiration. People calling her a role model. Garrett set his phone down and pressed his palms against his eyes. What had he done? He kept replaying that night at Romano's. Kept thinking about the look on Vivienne's face when she'd seen him with Justine. The way her whole body had seemed to collapse inward. He'd done that. He destroyed the one person who'd believed in him when no one else did. And for what? Justine hadn't spoken to him in over a month. She'd changed her number. Blocked him on everything. One of her friends had told him she was seeing someone new, a banker from Bellevue. She'd moved on like he'd never existed. Meanwhile, his life was in shambles. He'd been officially let go from the firm 2 weeks before Christmas. Martin had called him into his office, and the conversation had been brief. It's not personal, Garrett. But the optics are bad. Clients don't want to work with you. And frankly, your head hasn't been in the game for months. I understand, Garrett had said, because what else could he say? He'd cleaned out his desk that same day. Now he was living off savings that were dwindling fast, sending out resumes that went unanswered, and spending most of his time alone. His phone rang, jolting him from his thoughts. It was a number he didn't recognize. He answered. Hello. Garrett Harlow. Yes. This is Monica Ruiz from Channel 7 News. I'm doing a story on high-profile divorces and their impact on careers. I was hoping you'd be willing to sit down for an interview. Garrett's stomach turned. No. I'm not interested. I understand this is difficult, but the public is very interested in your side of the story. This would be an opportunity for you to. He hung up. His hands were shaking. They wanted to turn his pain into entertainment. Wanted him to bare his soul on camera so people could judge him, mock him, tear him apart even more than they already had. He turned off his phone and sat in the silence. By February, Vivienne's life had reached a rhythm she never expected to enjoy. Work was exploding. The manufacturing facility in Texas was ahead of schedule. 2 foreign governments had reached out about potential contracts. Forbes had named her one of the most influential entrepreneurs under 40. But more than that, she'd found something she hadn't realized she was missing. Peace. She no longer woke up with a knot in her stomach. No longer felt like she had to prove herself every second of every day. She was enough. Just as she was. Callum had become a constant presence in her life. They had dinner at least twice a week. He flew to Seattle when she couldn't get to New York. They talked about everything: business, family, past relationships, future dreams. He made her laugh in a way she hadn't laughed in years. And he never pushed. Never asked for more than she was ready to give. One evening in mid-February, they were having dinner at her favorite sushi place in downtown Seattle when he said, "Can I ask you something personal?" She looked up from her California roll. Sure. Are you happy? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? I mean, you've accomplished everything you set out to do. You're successful beyond measure. But are you happy? She thought about it. Really thought about it. I think I'm getting there, she said honestly. For a long time, I tied my happiness to achievement. To proving people wrong. But now, I don't know. I think I'm learning to just be. Callum smiled. Good. You deserve that. What about you? She asked. Are you happy? He met her eyes. I'm happier than I've been in a long time. There was something in the way he said it. Something that made her heart skip. Callum. I'm not going to push, he said quickly. I know you're still healing. I know the divorce was hard. But I need you to know that I care about you. A lot. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'd like to see where this goes. Vivienne's breath caught. She'd known, on some level, that his feelings had shifted. That their friendship had become something more. But hearing him say it out loud made it real. I care about you too, she said softly. But I don't know if I'm ready for anything. Not yet. That's okay, he said. I'm not going anywhere. And she believed him. March brought unexpected news. Vivienne was in her office when Duncan called. "I thought you should know," he said. Garrett's lawyer reached out. Vivienne's stomach tightened. "Why? The divorce is final." "I know. But apparently Garrett's in financial trouble. He lost his job. Can't find work. He's asking if you'd be willing to renegotiate the settlement." "Renegotiate?" Vivienne's voice was sharp. "He wants more money?" "Actually, no. He wants less." That stopped her. "What?" "He says he doesn't feel right taking half the house. That you earned it. He wants to sign it over to you and keep only a small portion of the savings." Vivienne was quiet for a long moment. "Why?" she finally asked. "I don't know. His lawyer says he just wants to do the right thing." She closed her eyes. "Tell him no." "No. The settlement was fair. I'm not changing it. If he's struggling, that's not my problem." "Vivienne, are you sure? This could be an olive branch." "I don't want an olive branch, Duncan. I want to move on." "Okay. I'll let them know." When she hung up, she felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, that Garrett thought he could waltz back into her life with some grand gesture. Sadness, that it had come to this. And something else. Relief. Because his problems were no longer hers to solve. Garrett received Duncan's response 2 days later. "She's not interested in renegotiating," Patricia told him over the phone. "She wants the settlement to stand as is." Garrett sat down heavily. "Okay. I'm sorry, Garrett. I know you were hoping to make things right." "It's fine," he said, though it wasn't. He'd thought maybe, just maybe, if he showed Vivienne he wasn't trying to take advantage of her, she'd see that he'd changed. That he regretted everything. But she didn't want to see it. She didn't want anything to do with him. And he couldn't blame her. That night, he did something he hadn't done in months. He wrote her a letter. Not an email. Not a text. An actual letter, handwritten on paper. "Dear Vivienne, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But I need to say this, even if you never read it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for leaving you. I'm sorry for not seeing how incredible you were. I'm sorry for being so caught up in my own insecurity that I destroyed the best thing in my life. You deserved better than me. You always did. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to respond. I just needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I lost. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I hope you're happy. I hope you find someone who sees you the way I should have. I hope you have everything you've ever dreamed of. I'm sorry. Garrett." He folded the letter, put it in an envelope, and addressed it to her office. Then he mailed it before he could change his mind. Vivienne received the letter a week later. Her assistant brought it to her during a meeting with Callum. "Sorry to interrupt," she said. "But this just came for you. It's marked personal." Vivienne took the envelope, frowning at the handwriting. She knew it immediately. Garrett's. Her heart sank. "You okay?" Callum asked. "Yeah. Just, give me a minute." She stepped out into the hallway and opened the envelope. As she read, her hands began to shake. The words blurred. The apologies. The regret. The pain. When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. Then she walked to the nearest trash can and dropped it in. She didn't need his apologies. Didn't need his regret. She'd already forgiven him. Not for his sake. But for hers. Because holding on to the anger, the hurt, the betrayal, was like carrying a weight she didn't need anymore. She was done carrying it. She walked back into the meeting, and Callum looked up. "Everything okay?" She smiled. "Everything's perfect." Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and longer days. Vivienne stood on the balcony of her new apartment, a penthouse in downtown Seattle with views of the Sound. She'd sold the house, unable to live there anymore without seeing ghosts in every room. This place was hers. Only hers. And it felt right. Her phone buzzed. A text from Callum. "Dinner tonight? I have something I want to ask you." She smiled. "Sure. 7. Perfect." That evening, She met him at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and rose. Callum stood when she arrived, pulling out her chair. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you." They ordered wine, and as they waited, Callum reached across the table and took her hand. "I've been thinking," he said, about us." Vivienne's heart fluttered. "I know you said you weren't ready," he continued. "And I respect that. But it's been months, Viv. And I can't keep pretending I don't feel what I feel." She looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd shown up when she needed someone most. Who'd believed in her. Supported her. Never asked for anything in return. This man who made her feel seen. "What do you feel?" she asked softly. "I'm in love with you," he said simply. "I have been for a while. And I know that's terrifying. I know you've been hurt. But I'm not him. I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to let you down." Tears pricked her eyes. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. But you're also the bravest person I've ever met. So maybe, just maybe, you could be brave enough to give this a chance." She thought about Garrett. About the pain. The betrayal. But she also thought about everything she'd built since then. The strength she'd found. The life she'd created. She wasn't the same woman who'd stood in that parking lot, watching her husband choose someone else. She was stronger now. And she was ready. "Okay," she said. Callum blinked. "Okay. Yes. Let's give this a chance." His smile was brighter than the sunset. He stood, pulled her to her feet, and kissed her. And for the first time in a year, Vivienne felt whole. Have you ever been afraid to love again after being hurt? What helped you take that leap? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Garrett saw the photo 2 weeks later. It was everywhere. Entertainment blogs. Social media. Even legitimate news outlets. Vivienne and Callum at some charity gala, her in a stunning red dress, him in a tuxedo, looking at each other like they were the only two people in the room. The headline read, "It's official, Vivienne Harlow and Callum Brixton confirm relationship." Garrett stared at it until his eyes burned. She looked happy. Truly, radiantly happy. And he'd never felt more alone. He closed the laptop and walked to his window. His new apartment was small, dingy, in a part of town he'd never imagined living in. But it was all he could afford now. His phone rang. He almost didn't answer. But it was his brother, Colin. "Hey," Garrett said. "Hey. You doing okay? I saw the news." "I'm fine." "You don't sound fine." Garrett sighed. "What do you want me to say, Colin? That I ruined my life? That I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me for someone who didn't even stick around? Yeah, I did. And now I get to live with it." There was a long pause. "You know," Colin said quietly, "it's not too late to fix your life. It might be too late for Vivienne. But it's not too late for you." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about getting help, man. Therapy. AA if you need it. Something. Because you're spiraling, and I'm worried about you." "I'm not drinking," Garrett said defensively. "Maybe not. But you're drowning. And you need to save yourself before it's too late." Garrett was quiet. "Think about it," Colin said. "Okay. Okay." After they hung up, Garrett sat in the dark for a long time. Then he opened his laptop and searched for therapists in Seattle. Summer arrived with warmth and light. Vivienne's relationship with Callum deepened in ways she hadn't expected. They traveled together, to Paris for a conference, to Tokyo to meet with potential partners. They spent weekends hiking in the Cascades, cooking dinner in her apartment, talking until 2 in the morning about everything and nothing. He met her friends. She met his family. And slowly, carefully, she let herself fall. It was different than it had been with Garrett. With Garrett, she'd always felt like she was chasing something. His approval. His attention. His love. With Callum, she felt like an equal. Like a partner. One evening in July, they were lying on a blanket in her living room, the city lights twinkling outside, when he said, "Move in with me." She turned her head to look at him. "What?" "Move in with me. In New York. We're together all the time anyway. And your company's expanding globally. It makes sense to have a base there. Her heart raced. That's a big step. I know. But I'm ready if you are. She thought about it. About leaving Seattle, the city where she'd built everything. But she also thought about the life she could build in New York. With him. Okay, she said. His eyes lit up. Yeah. He kissed her, and she felt it again. That feeling of being whole. Garrett started therapy in August. His therapist, a calm woman named Dr. Patel, didn't let him off easy. You're here because you're in pain, she said during their first session. But pain is just a symptom. We need to figure out what's underneath it. Over the following weeks, they dug deep. Into his childhood, growing up in the shadow of his perfect younger brother. Into his marriage, and how he'd felt invisible next to Vivienne's success. Into his affair, and how he'd used Justine to feel important. It was brutal. But it was also necessary. You didn't leave Vivienne because you stopped loving her, Dr. Patel said one afternoon. You left because you didn't love yourself. And you thought someone else's admiration would fill that hole. But it didn't, Garrett said quietly. No. Because it never does. You have to fill it yourself. He started doing the work. Journaling. Meditating. Facing the parts of himself he'd spent years avoiding. And slowly, painfully, he began to heal. Not for Vivienne. But for himself. In September, Vivienne moved to New York. It was strange at first, living in a city that never slept, navigating subway systems and bagel shops and the relentless energy of Manhattan. But Callum made it easy. He showed her his favorite spots. Introduced her to his friends. Made her feel at home. And her business thrived. With Callum's help, she secured contracts in Germany, Japan, and South Korea. Harlow Industries became a global name. But more than that, she became happy. Not because of her success. Not because of Callum. But because she'd finally learned to be happy with herself. One crisp October evening, Callum took her to Central Park. They walked hand in hand, leaves crunching beneath their feet, the city alive around them. I have something for you, he said, stopping beneath a street lamp. What is it? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Vivienne's breath caught. He opened it, revealing a simple, elegant ring. I'm not asking you to marry me, he said quickly. Not yet. I know you're still healing. But I want you to know that I'm serious about this. About us. And when you're ready, I'll be here. Tears filled her eyes. Callum. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. She took the box and looked at the ring. It was beautiful. And terrifying. And perfect. Thank you, she whispered. He kissed her forehead. Take all the time you need. Garrett heard about Vivienne's engagement through the grapevine. It wasn't official yet, but people were talking. Speculating. He was sitting in a coffee shop when he overheard two women at the next table. Did you see that photo of Vivienne Harlow and Callum Brixton? Someone said he proposed. Oh my God, really? They're perfect together. Right? Like a power couple for the ages. Garrett stared into his coffee. It hurt. But not the way it would have 6 months ago. Now, it was just a dull ache. A reminder of what he'd lost. But also, strangely, a relief. Because she was happy. And maybe that was enough. He paid for his coffee and walked out into the cool autumn air. He had a job interview that afternoon. Nothing glamorous, just a small firm in Tacoma. But it was a start. Dr. Patel had told him that healing wasn't linear. That some days would be harder than others. But he was trying. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. December arrived with snow and celebration. Vivienne's company hit a major milestone, 50,000 employees worldwide. She was featured on the cover of Time magazine as Person of the Year. And on Christmas Eve, Callum asked her again. They were in his apartment, a fire crackling in the fireplace, snow falling softly outside. I know I said I'd wait, he said, taking her hand. But I can't anymore. Vivienne Harlow, will you marry me? She looked at him, this man who'd stood by her through everything. And she realized something. She wasn't afraid anymore. Yes, she said, tears streaming down her face. Yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and they held each other as the city sparkled outside. Garrett spent Christmas with his family in Portland. It was hard at first, being around his brother's perfect life. But Colin pulled him aside on Christmas morning. "I'm proud of you," he said. "For what?" "For showing up. For doing the work. I know it's not easy." Garrett nodded. "It's not. But I'm trying. That's all anyone can do." That evening, as they sat around the fire, Garrett's mother handed him a gift. Inside was a journal. "For your new chapter," she said. He looked at her, and for the first time in months, he smiled. "Thank you." Vivienne and Callum were married in May, in a small ceremony overlooking the ocean in Montauk. It was intimate. Just close friends and family. She wore a simple white dress. He wore a navy suit. And when they said their vows, promising to love and support each other, Vivienne felt something she'd never felt before. Certainty. This was where she was meant to be. As they danced under the stars, Callum whispered in her ear, "I love you." "I love you too," she said. And she meant it with every fiber of her being. Garrett saw the wedding photos online. He was sitting in his new apartment, much nicer than the last one, when they popped up on his feed. Vivienne looked radiant. Happy. Loved. He stared at the photo for a long time. Then he closed the laptop and opened his journal. "Dear Vivienne, I'll never send this. But I need to write it. Congratulations on your wedding. You look happy. And you deserve to be. I spent a long time being angry. At you. At myself. At the world. But I'm not angry anymore. I'm grateful. Because losing you forced me to find myself. And I'm finally becoming the man I should have been all along. I hope you have a beautiful life. I really do. Garrett." He closed the journal and looked out the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. And for the first time in 2 years, Garrett felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not for a future with Vivienne, but for a future with himself. And that was enough. Vivienne Harlow built an empire, found true love, and learned that her worth was never tied to someone else's belief in her. Garrett Harlow lost everything, but in the process, found himself. And sometimes, that's how the story has to end. Not with reconciliation, but with growth. Not with revenge, but with peace. Because the best kind of victory isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving to yourself that you are always enough. So here's my question for you. Do you think people can truly change after losing everything? Or are some mistakes simply too costly? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched you, hit that like button and subscribe, because tomorrow, I've got another story that will remind you why second chances matter, even when they come in unexpected ways. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, your worth is not determined by who stays or who leaves. It's determined by who you choose to become. I'll see you in the next one.